If you've been thinking about starting a ketogenic diet, I encourage you to just do it. Yes, you are the reason I started this podcast in the first place. More than anything else, I love to empower people to take responsibility for their own health. And for so many people, a ketogenic diet is the most effective way to reverse metabolic dysfunction, which is the very foundation of all chronic illness. But to do this effectively, you need 3 specific tools or you're going to struggle and you won't see results. I do not want this to happen to you. I give you these 3 tools and walk you through how to set them up and use them to transform your health in my 5-day keto challenge. You can register right now for my next 5-day keto challenge at ketogenicdietcoach.com. Hello and welcome to the Ketogenic Diet Show. My name is Mary Beauchamp. I'll be your hostess today, and I'm excited to introduce Chris Riccardi to the show today. Chris is a 28-year-old engineer from Chicago who was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease when he was 23 years old. He reached remission from Crohn's using an all-meat diet, namely the Paleolithic ketogenic diet developed by Paleo Medicina out of Budapest, Hungary. Chris has been on this diet for 3 years and been medication-free now for more than 2. He has been through quite an incredible journey. At his worst, he weighed 90 pounds and could barely get out of bed. He slept no more than 1 to 2 hours at a time for weeks to months because he was running to the bathroom sometimes 15 times per day. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. I would love for you just to begin by telling us your story and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Mary. So yeah, I was 23, 22 years old, I think. I was in my last year of college. And I thought that I had gotten food poisoning or something over the summer. And after about a week or 2, it just didn't go away. So I knew something was wrong. And just kind of Googling around online, I figured it was something more serious. I had a feeling it was colitis or Crohn's disease. So immediately, I figured I could try to do something proactive about it, see if there was a diet that I could try or something natural to try to recover from it before it got too serious. And so I found something called the specific carbohydrate diet, which is very common, with people with colitis and Crohn's. So I give that a shot, and it seemed to help. The first thing I did was I cut out all grains, and that was a big improvement right away. And so for the next couple of months, I went back to school and things were going well, and I was okay. I was still having some symptoms, fatigue and things like that, but I was able to get through school. And then I came home that winter break and just kind of fell off the diet a little bit, and that was enough to just send me down a really bad course. And I lost like 30, 40 pounds. I was hospitalized. And that's when I was officially diagnosed with Crohn's ulcerative colitis. It was severe pancolitis. A second diagnosis was Crohn's disease. They weren't exactly sure which one it was. It looked like Crohn's in some ways and colitis in others. So at that point, they put me on a pretty high dose of steroids to get me out of the flare and sent me home, basically. They gave me some I asked for dietary advice in the hospital, and it was literally laughable. I thought they were joking what they told me.
Really? What did they say? I'm curious.
Well, I was sitting in my hospital bed with my parents there, and the lead gastroenterologist at the hospital, very, very well-known, high-ranking hospital, he came in with all his residents and was talking to me a bit about the diagnosis. And I said, okay, well, what should I be eating? I'm taking these steroids. I'm going to be doing this regimen, but what should I be consuming? Well, I heard that those coconut cream cookies have real coconut in them and fiber is good for you. So that might help you get your weight back, and you should be eating, coconut cream cookies. And I literally laughed because I thought he was joking, but I looked up and all the residents and he were just dead serious. And that's when I realized these people don't know anything about nutrition. They were recommending coconut cookies to me. So that was the first time I was like, something's not right here,
That's devastating to hear that when you know better. And I've been in this situation where I felt I knew more than the doctors, and it's very disturbing.
Disturbing is the right word. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank goodness you knew something, that there was another way, and you were determined. So you must have continued on your path of diving into the research and just looking for information you could find online after that, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I went home and I kept researching. The steroids took a really long time to work, so I was bedridden for, a couple of months, and it took a while to recover. But I was determined to try to get off the steroids without going on biologic therapies or surgery or anything like that. So I
Did they
just kept.
recommend surgery?
No, they didn't, but I was worried it was going to get to that point if I didn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
They said that surgery is pretty rare at this point, in with all the treatment options that they have. But based on what I was reading online, it happens to a lot of people still, so I was concerned. Um, so for about the next year, I kept trying different supplements and dietary approaches. I was taking turmeric and things to lower inflammation and trying all these different things out, probiotics, prebiotics, things like that. And I was never able to get off the steroids. Every time I tapered down below like 15 milligrams, it would just flare up again, and I would have to take more steroids. So eventually, I decided, well, I need to do something to get off the steroids. I had been on them for way too long, so I started taking mesalamine, which is supposed to be, it's just an anti-inflammatory basically, and it's supposed to be one of like the most safe drugs for Crohn's colitis on the market. Everyone told me, oh, this is super low risk. You might as well try this. So I went on that about a year after being hospitalized, and within a couple months, um, I had some routine blood work done, and my liver enzymes were extremely elevated,
Mm.
like 10x.
Wow.
So they went in and they did some scans and looked at my liver, and I apparently had some inflammation in a bile duct, and
Mm.
they used that plus the elevated liver enzymes to diagnose me with a disease called primary sclerosing cholangitis,
Mm.
which basically, it attacks the liver. Your immune system is attacking the liver. It's common with colitis, and they typically say you have around like 10 years before the liver completely fails on average, and then they put you on a donor list when the symptoms start appearing, and you have to go through that whole thing. That's basically all they do about it. So I was a
So
little,
they said keep taking the medication, and in 10 years or so you'll need a liver transplant?
yeah, basically,
Oh.
yeah. So I was very skeptical of the timeline of everything. Some things just didn't make sense in my mind. I had just started taking this mesalamine, and if you just do a quick Google search, I mean, liver damage is one of the possible side effects. So I proposed this to them multiple times. I had a gastroenterologist, a liver specialist, all these doctors, and I said, "Well, could this be the mesalamine?" Well, no, 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 no. This is the safest drug on the market. This, it's not the mesalamine. And at one point, I was sitting in my specialist's office, and when I brought this up to him, he literally did a Google search for the drug and was using the same website that I was using to collect information on the clinical trial. And I had to point out to him, well, look, I know this is low probability, but this has happened and it's possible. And the sample size of this test was low, so maybe we should consider this. And so I kept collecting more research and old blood work and things that seem suspicious to me. For example, when I was hospitalized, I had a CT scan done. And so my theory was, well, if I had the CT scan done and the inflammation was there in my bile duct at the time, but I didn't have elevated liver enzymes, then perhaps it was a coincidence and this was just a cyst or something in my bile duct. And so he said, okay, well, if you can send me all the information, your blood work from when you were hospitalized and the CT scan, I'll take a look at it. So I drove around to the hospital, collected all my old documents, and I sent it to him. And later that night, he called me and said, stop taking the mesalamine.
Wow.
So I stopped taking it, and within 2 to 3 weeks, everything completely normalized.
Wow.
Yeah. But
So
then I
it's
had
just
the,
such an incredible demonstration of how we have to advocate for our own health. We have to stay on top of the science, the literature, what's really going on with this, with the studies, and bring this to our care professionals and our doctors to educate them. So way to go for that.
Yeah, thank you. That was like the biggest takeaway for me was that you really need to advocate for yourself. You know, doctors have good intentions. They want to help. They want to do the right thing, but there's really no system for one person trying to diagnose you and make you a healthy human. It's a specialist for one organ, and they have one drug to treat that one thing, and that's
Yeah.
what they know.
Yeah.
So you really need to be the holistic expert of your own health, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for the sharing that. That's so important.
Yeah.
So you went off the drug.
hmm So I
Okay.
stopped taking the mesalamine. I was still taking the steroids, but I was getting lower than I ever had been before on the steroids. So the mesalamine was definitely helping. But
Mm.
when I stopped taking them, everything came back. All the symptoms came back, and I went into a really bad flare.
Mm.
Um,
And are you
but
still in college at this point? You're still trying to do school?
no, so I had left school and I had started working. Um, I was about a year or two into my job. Uh,
Okay.
So yeah, so I realized that I needed to do something because the mesalamine wasn't working, or it was working, but it was damaging my liver. I couldn't get off the
Mhm.
steroids with what I was trying before. So that's when I turned to carnivore. I had a family member who had psoriatic arthritis, and they basically went carnivore to clear it up. And so my family was already kind of aware of this. So I started looking into things a little bit. And then I found the work from Paleo in Hungary.
Mhm.
So I figured there's doctors in Hungary that are using this to treat a range of autoimmune diseases. So I set up a consultation with them, and they kind of helped me get started with the diet.
Great. I'm familiar with paleomedicine, and it's amazing what they're doing.
Yeah, they're really, in my opinion, the leading experts in this space. There's a lot of people online advocating for this, and they're doing a good job spreading the word. But they really have a lot of clinical experience
Yeah.
treating people, which is
Yeah.
rare.
And they've done some incredible work around studies and case studies and presenting that information. So,
hmm
yeah.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to them. So I had my consultation with them, and I started on the diet, and things started improving. I was still taking the steroids, so I wasn't totally sure is it the diet or the steroids. But within a year, I, for the first time, got off of the steroids completely.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, but the thing was, I still didn't have things perfected. I think I was still consuming meat from sources that weren't as clean as they could have been. And about a month after stopping the steroids, I went into another flare.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of common when you stop taking a drug, the symptoms just come back. So this time I was determined to continue with the diet, but I was taking no medication. So I was again really sick. I mean, I weighed 90 pounds. I was bedridden,
Wow.
and I couldn't do anything. So I wasn't relying on the drugs. I was just using the diet to recover, and that was kind of risky because, um, I hadn't really heard of people coming out of flare ups just with a diet. It's common to take drugs and then slowly taper off of them, but it seemed kind of risky to just get out of the flare with a diet. But the alternative was to go on biologic therapies and do all these things that I really didn't want to do based on the experience that I had so far. So I continued with the diet, and things started to improve immediately. I changed my sources a little bit. I
Mm.
did some other lifestyle things that I think were helpful, and within a year, I would say I was out of like the severe flare. It took a long time, but it took about a year for all the bleeding within my digestive tract to really stop.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a slow process, but I was tracking data every day to see that there was improvements. So because day to day you don't realize things are changing. Some days things get worse, some weeks things get worse, but month to month I could tell things were getting better based on the data I was tracking. So that was about a little over 2 years now. So the first year was slow and difficult, and then this last year I've really kind of accelerated. Um, it's been 2 years now, over 2 years since I've taken the last dose of the prednisone. I'm back to exercising. I can travel again. Work is fine. Things are good.
Okay.
In many ways, I feel better than I did before I got sick. So
Wow.
things are going well.
That's incredible. So I'm wondering, so you had to fine tune things because there was obviously you're extremely sensitive. So that always means fine tuning and fine tuning until you get things right. And sometimes that's enough for people to just say, forget it, I give up. I'm going back to the pills or whatever, the anti-inflammatories. But you didn't stop there. You kept on. And so I congratulate you for that. And so what kind of subtle changes did you make? You talked about sourcing. I'd love to hear more about that. Quick break from the programming to let you know that nothing makes me happier than empowering people to make informed decisions about their health based on the hard scientific facts. The ketogenic diet has stood the test of time, and the scientific literature shows us that this can be a powerful healing strategy. Don't let another day slip by when you could be doing something proactively to change your health. If you're still wondering how to begin your keto diet, it's time to stop thinking about it and start doing something. Go to ketogenicdietcoach.com and register for my next 5-day keto challenge. You will walk away with a clear plan, and I know you will absolutely be amazed by the results you will see in just 5 days.
Yeah, the biggest change I made was I found farms that I knew were processing things very well. I knew there was no cross-contamination. Before that, I was eating just meat from the grocery store, Whole Foods mostly, thinking, well, it's grass-fed, so it's probably better. But you don't know where they're processing these things, what other things are getting in there. Stuff has a lot of histamine because it's sitting out, things like that. So I started buying from a farm locally, and that made a big improvement. And right now I'm eating only bison and lamb, and I handle that better than beef. And I hear that from kind of a lot of people. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's the aging process or what it is exactly, but I definitely feel better with lamb or bison.
Yeah, I hear that a lot too. And I feel the same way about my diet when I eat those things. So yeah, it's important.
hmm Yeah, some of the other things I did, I think the next biggest thing I did about a year in, which I wish I had done sooner, but vitamin D is super critical
Yep.
as well. I've noticed if my vitamin D is low, I don't feel good, and it just everything is worse.
And
Um,
what's your main source of vitamin D?
Originally, paleo medicina told me that I should be able to get everything from diet alone, but my levels are always low. So I tried this one supplement that they recommended just as like a boost, and the idea was you take this super high dose of vitamin D, and then the diet should regulate you. But I was just never high enough in vitamin D.
Okay.
So what I started doing was just getting a lot of sunlight. In the summer, I would go outside. I would try to get at least like 20, 30 minutes every day.
Yeah.
And now that we're in Chicago in the winter, I obviously don't have that luxury. So what I've been doing is I've been going to a tanning salon that has UVA and UVB bulbs so that I
Great.
can produce the vitamin D that way.
That's great.
Um,
It's so important that you're mentioning this. It's critical for anybody to heal their body fully. You have to be exposed to that sunlight. It's so important. And taking a pill can be fine for some people, but there's nothing that can replace the natural sunlight. So I'm really happy to hear you say that.
yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So good for you for finding these little nuances. So keep going.
Yeah, one of the other things that I did was I cut out all dish soaps on my cookware.
Ah,
Yeah, so what I realized was I was running stuff through the dishwasher, and it would leave a residue of like soap and things on the plates. I realized because I have an air fryer that I use, I cook everything in it. Highly recommend if you're on a
mhm.
carnivore diet. But
Yeah.
I had put a plate, like a piece of bakeware in the air fryer after taking it out of the dishwasher, and the whole room when I came back smelled like dish soap. So that's
Oh,
when I realized maybe this is not so good to be ingesting.
yeah.
So I just started washing everything from hand with hot water, sponge. I don't know for sure how big of a difference that made, but I think that just intuitively, why would I want to put those chemicals? Why would those chemicals be okay to put in my body?
Right.
So that's the other big thing I did, and I at one point I had really bad eczema all over my body too.
Mm,
And so I stopped using like soaps and detergents, things that were really harsh, and used more natural alternatives. Um, so I'm really careful about what I put in my body. And the other thing too, Paleo Medicina told me, not even toothpaste, mouthwash, none of that, you know.
Wow.
And so I haven't used any toothpaste or mouthwash or anything, just warm water and, toothbrush for 3 years. And every
Wow.
time I go to the dentist, they keep saying, man, your gums and everything keep getting healthier and healthier, which is
Uh-huh.
crazy.
That's great. I love that story. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, anything you put on your skin or in your mouth is getting absorbed into your bloodstream, and if you don't have the gut integrity to handle the toxicity, it's just leaching out into your bloodstream and making, symptoms happen. And eczema is a classic sign of a skin manifestation of a leaky gut, essentially.
Hmm.
So it's
And,
really,
and
really important. Anybody who's suffering from an autoimmune condition of any kind has got to stop with the chemicals in their body, in their mouth, on their skin, on their hair, and lotions, potions, all of that has to go. But to go to the extreme of no toothpaste, that really is says a lot about your commitment. So I think that's awesome.
yeah, well, I mean, the other thing too is when you're that sensitive, you can really tell how damaging everything is,
Yes,
You put something
absolutely.
on your skin and you get a rash, and it's like, well, obviously this is not a good thing. And even before I got the autoimmune condition, I remember getting out of the shower all the time, and I would see these like little red bumps all over my skin. I figure, oh, I'm just dry from the hot water, but that wasn't it. It was my whole life. I had these reactions to soaps and things that are just, I don't know what the issue with them is, but it always bothered me. So I think it was just over time, all these toxins building up and building up.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, absolutely. And you're sensitive, so it's good. You've probably been sensitive for a long time, since you were a young child, and it just progressed and progressed to the point of where it got to. So, what when you were younger, was there a particular? You said that you had an incident where you felt like you had gotten the flu, but it seemed beyond the flu, but something happened. Was there anything that led up to that moment where you had your first sort of reactive episode, a stressful event, or anything in your life that sort of exacerbated this underlying, festering condition that was there that sort of brought it to the surface?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It came on pretty suddenly. I think that before I thought that I had the food poisoning for like a week or two, my digestion was not great. But for the past 4 years, 5 years before that, I was in college and it was extremely stressful.
Mm,
And that summer, I had been working an internship at the company I work at now. And the internships for these jobs, it's like a 4 month hiring process. It's a 4 month long interview. So I was pretty stressed about that. Um, and I was working out every day for 1.5, 2 hours. I mean, every day, like religiously. And I was just eating a lot to try to bulk up. And I felt like I looked good and I thought I was healthy, but I think I was just inflicting too much stress on my body. And so that's when things started going downhill.
wow. Did you ever have any other symptoms, like psychological things you noticed? I know you mentioned fatigue, but did you ever suffer from anxiety or depression?
No, I didn't ever feel like I had anxiety or depression. But I do know that when I was eating a carbohydrate based diet, I had a lot of problems with blood sugar.
Mm.
And I would have to snack every 2 hours just to keep my brain working. Otherwise, I would start getting hangry and not feel good. Um, I even had like skin tags starting to develop that went away immediately when I went on carnivore. Now my energy levels are stable no matter what. My brain is always working. I feel way more grounded. But
Mhm.
I definitely had some weird blood sugar issues like hypoglycemia almost my whole life. I would wake up in the middle of the night sometimes when I wasn't eating enough or wasn't eating well, eating too many, fast burning carbs. 3 in the morning, I would wake up in cold sweat and just shaking, and that
Uh-huh.
would be the most awful feeling in the world. That would happen very frequently, and that never happens now.
Wow. That's a classic sign of hypoglycemia for sure, and insulin resistance with the skin tags. So you were already sort of your metabolism was struggling for a while before you had this happen. So it's these things don't happen overnight. Getting Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis or these types of things, they take years to develop. And with all the good intentions, we don't know until the dam breaks that, wow, there's been something going on here for a while. Um, did you have You said you at times wouldn't be able to sleep more than 1 or 2 hours because you would have to get up to go to the bathroom so often. So with this type of diagnosis, there's frequent diarrhea. Is that correct? And just loose stools and blood in your stool and a lot of pain. Was that what you were experiencing with the Crohn's?
Yeah, the pain was less frequent for me, but and it was painful, but that wasn't the most severe thing. The hardest thing about it was, yeah, I mean, going to the bathroom, running to the bathroom 15 times a day. You're bleeding, so you're anemic. You have no
Ugh,
energy, and you can't sleep at all because you fall asleep and you have to run to the bathroom.
wow.
So that was tough. You really can't do anything. You can't leave the house. That was mentally challenging.
I bet. I can't even imagine. And down to 90 pounds. I mean, how much do you weigh now?
I'm about 135. I was 130 before I got sick, so I was always pretty skinny. But I've started, doing a lot of weightlifting, so I'm hoping to get up to like 140, 150 in the next year.
That's awesome. So now you're basically running on ketones. You're in ketosis most of the time, maybe all the time, but do you check your ketones and do you monitor your blood sugar at all?
I used to when I was getting started with the diet, just to make sure I was eating the right amount of protein and fat and everything. I should say I eat a very high fat diet. Anyone who knows about the Paleo diet knows it's a very high fat, moderate protein
Mhm.
diet. So in the morning, I target my glucose to be below 85 milligrams per deciliter, and then my ketones I keep above 2. Um, so I've seen them go as high as 5, almost 6. I feel best when I'm not eating too much protein. Eating too much protein definitely weighs me down. I get lethargic. It'll kick me out of ketosis a little bit, and I just don't
Mhm.
feel as good.
Okay. And so what's your threshold for protein intake during the day that you feel is best for you, like in grams, if you wouldn't mind sharing that?
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly because I haven't been counting recently, but I would say um, like enough food for me is probably like 450 grams of 90% lean ground bison.
Mm.
So I'll eat more if I'm really active, if I'm running and exercising a lot, but that's enough to sustain me for sure and feel totally fine.
Okay. So
So
in
that might
terms,
be like 100 and I don't know, what would that be like maybe 90 to 140 grams of protein a day, I would say,
okay.
which is more
Okay.
than paleo medicine would want me to eat. If they hear this, they're not going to be happy with me, but
Okay.
yeah.
But you had to sort of find your threshold and your the point at which you felt that your best versus when you ate more and didn't feel your best. So this is just a great um expression of how one can really fine tune things if you are very diligent about documentation and monitoring and really checking in with your body and seeing how it's feeling and really taking good notes because then you can see, okay, I felt tired on Friday, but today I feel great. What did I eat on Friday and where were my ketones and where were my blood sugar? And may not be something that we all have to do forever in every day of our lives, but it's so important to track that at the beginning so you can really see how your food is affecting your metabolism and your brain function and your energy levels and all of that. So good for you for being so diligent and really tracking things. I think that's such an important part of this process of healing for everybody that I work with. And I know people don't like to hear that, they want to hear, oh, just take a handful of this and a little bit of that. But if you really get down to the details, your results will be so much more um, faster and profound. I feel so. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot of experimentation, and it was 4 or 5 years of experimenting. I should say too, when I was recovering, I did eat a lot less. When you're sitting in bed not doing anything, you don't have to consume as much. So I was consuming probably closer to 300 grams of meat, with an additional maybe 80 grams of fat per day. I eat a significantly more food now, just because I'm so much more active. But during the healing process, it was a lot less.
Do you have a sense of where your fat intake is during the days?
Yeah, at least 100 grams, sometimes close to 200 grams per day.
Right.
And yeah, the interesting thing is, even if I'm just pigging out and eating an obscene amount of food, I just won't gain much weight. I could eat 4,000 calories a day for 3 weeks and maybe gain a couple pounds. I mean, it's really bizarre. It goes to show you the whole calorie in, calorie out thing just is too simplified.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. So you're working out, you're feeling better, your life is back. I mean, you've really come a long way.
Yeah,
You've
definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're working full time.
Yep, yeah, and I just started traveling again, which is wonderful. I mean, it's so liberating to be able to even leave the house. I mean, every little thing is so wonderful, you know? So to be able to travel and do things again, it's really great.
That's so awesome. I'm so happy for you. So, do you have any words of wisdom, any last little bit of advice you might leave somebody if they are struggling with their digestion, or any part of their health, really? But you are expert in the digestive area. So, is there anything you might want to add or leave people with, or before we part ways on this call? I would love to just see what you would want to say to a friend or loved one who is struggling.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from this experience for me is that you really need to advocate for yourself. Um, you know, it's good to have expert opinions and to consult with your doctors, of course. But you really need to be the one taking charge and get a second opinion, a third opinion, do your own research. There's nothing wrong with that. And don't be afraid to try something out for 30 days. It's the beginning of cutting things out, cutting sugar out, or anything that you're addicted to. The beginning is always the hardest, and it only gets easier. And it's worth the struggle up front to do these things. Your life is worth it. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I could not agree more. That first 30 days can be so challenging when we're so hooked in our brain, and our neurochemicals are just really wanting that dopamine and all the things that come with carbohydrate intake. And to really reprogram and rewire our brain chemistry is really challenging. And the cravings can be ferocious. So stick with it, y'all. Whoever's listening to this can be done. It's happening all the time. Millions of people are healing themselves from debilitating uh, gastrointestinal upsets. And I work with a lot of people around gut healing as well. I with the Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride's gut healing program, and it's very similar to Paleo Medicina. You can also find them at the International Center for Medical Nutrition, I believe is the new name of their website. But they used to be Paleo Medicina, and you can still find them under that name if you Google them. But the work they're doing is incredible, and I really just have a lot of respect for Dr. Sophia Clemens and the work that she's brought forth. And so I'm glad that you were able to find them. I mean, thank goodness you came upon that, website, and were able to actually go or visit them virtually and get this consultation. That was just life changing. So keep researching, keep looking for answers, and you really are just a model example of how one has to be an advocate for themselves and really just be aware of, and you bringing those side effects to your doctor is incredible. And you could be on a liver transplant list right now, if you hadn't have done that. So yay for you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I so appreciate you being here. And thank you again for sharing your amazing, inspiring story. And I will see you, in the groups that we're in, and I'll be following you. So yeah.
Likewise. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I realize that what you've heard here is a radical departure from today's politically correct nutritional guidance. If it were politically correct, it would be endorsed by the media. And if it were endorsed by the media, it would be endorsed by Big Pharma. Let's face it, Big Pharma makes money when you and I stay sick. But the truth is, you can take control of your health if you have a plan, a system in place, and a support network. After helping people get keto adapted for over 25 years, I found that everyone who succeeds does 3 things. I walk you through exactly what these are and what to do specifically to get into ketosis in just 5 days. You can join my next 5-day keto challenge right now by going to ketogenicdietcoach.com. I look forward to seeing you on the inside of the challenge and helping you have wild success with your keto diet.